a body parts found in the trunk of a Tesla owned by the singer David. We now know who the victim is in this case, and there are a lot of twists and turns.
PD officers were called to the tow yard over a foul odor coming from the Tesla, which had been sitting in the lot for several days.
To the medical examiner, she was about 5'2", 71 pounds, with dark wavy hair and a distinctive tattoo on her right index finger. She was also wearing a tube top.
23 Tesla is registered in Hempstead, Texas, to multi-platinum artist and musician David Anthony Burke, known professionally as David.
When I was, as the detective, I'd be like solving murders that I'm committing myself.
Media trained you. That's controversial.
It's controversial of kids.
No, I need a really good.
Okay,
it's been a good one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Mwah, 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 mwah. Oh my! Delete everything. Delete everything. Everything goes.
The discovery was straight out of a horror movie. A Tesla sitting abandoned in a Hollywood tow yard, reeking of death. When police popped the trunk, they didn't just find a crime scene. They uncovered the dismembered remains of a teenage girl. And the car? It wasn't stolen. It was registered to none other than platinum-selling artist David Anthony Burke, the singer fans know simply as David. From that moment, everything spiraled. Blood evidence, disturbing music lyrics that suddenly read like confessions, and a trail of online receipts that paint a terrifying picture. Now, people are asking the chilling question, was David hiding a double life as a star and a predator? And has he been leaving clues in plain sight this entire time? The nightmare began in the most unexpected place, a Hollywood tow yard. Workers noticed a foul stench seeping from a sleek black Tesla that had been parked there for days, but nothing could have prepared them, or the LAPD, for what was inside. When officers popped open the trunk, they were hit with a scene straight out of a horror film. The chopped-up remains of a young girl, stuffed into bags and left to rot. At first glance, it seemed like a random, abandoned vehicle hiding a crime. But the shock came when detectives ran the plates. The Tesla wasn't stolen. It was registered to none other than 20-year-old platinum-selling singer David Anthony Burke, the rising star known simply as David. In an instant, the story went from tragic to unthinkable. Fans who once obsessed over his brooding lyrics and gothic stage persona now found themselves combing through his catalog, realizing that some of his most chilling songs and videos seemed less like art and more like a confession in plain sight. And as police swarmed the case, the world was left asking, had David been leaving a trail of blood in his music all along? When investigators carefully pulled the bags from the trunk, the horror only deepened. Inside were the heavily decomposed, dismembered remains of a young female, her body so badly damaged that at first police couldn't even determine her identity. The Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office described the victim as barely 5'2", weighing just 71 pounds, with dark wavy hair and a small but distinctive tattoo etched on her right index finger. She was found wearing a black tube top, leggings, and jewelry, a stud earring and a chain bracelet shaped like a W. But her condition told a darker story. The body had been left to decay for so long that officials admitted it could take weeks to make a positive ID, and without an obvious cause of death, they immediately began treating the case as a homicide. For days, all the public knew was that the victim was a teenage girl, but behind closed doors, forensic teams were already connecting the dots to one of California's most heartbreaking missing persons cases. Finally, after painstaking DNA testing, the truth came crashing down. The victim was confirmed to be 15-year-old Celeste Rivas Hernandez, a girl reported missing more than a year earlier from Lake Elsinore, about 69 miles outside Los Angeles. She had vanished at just 13 years old, her disappearance haunting her family and community. Now, her tragic fate was tied not just to an abandoned Tesla, but to a rising star whose name was about to be dragged into the darkest scandal of his generation. For Celeste's family, the confirmation was shattering. After more than a year of unanswered questions, false leads, and sleepless nights, they were forced to face the nightmare reality that their daughter would never come home. In a heartbreaking public statement, her relatives wrote. As many of you know, Celeste Rivas Hernandez has been identified as the body found last week. She was a beloved daughter, sister, cousin, and friend. Our family is devastated by this tragic loss. Their words were followed by something no parent should ever have to do: launching a GoFundMe campaign to cover her funeral expenses. Organized by family friends Esmeralda Lozano and Giselle Vera, the page described Celeste as a kind, radiant soul who loved music, laughter, and being around the people she cared for. They said she was taken too soon, a phrase that cut even deeper once the details of her disappearance came back into focus. At just 13 years old, Celeste had been last seen in gray pants, a black sweater, a hat, and Hello Kitty sandals. Clothing her family still remembered vividly because it was all they had left of her. As donations and condolences poured in from across the community, one thing became clear. Before she became a headline, Celeste was a child, a daughter with dreams, friends, and a future that was ripped away. And that's what makes the next twist in this case so disturbing, because the evidence didn't just point toward a random crime. It connected directly back to the man whom millions of fans once saw as their idol. That's when the case took a turn from tragic to deeply unsettling, because investigators and fans alike began digging into David's own music, and what they uncovered blurred the line between art and confession. In a leaked 2023 track, David name-dropped a girl called Celeste, and the lyrics sounded far too specific to ignore. He sang, "Oh, Celeste, the girl with my name tattooed on her chest. Smell her on my clothes like cigarettes. I hear her voice each time I take a breath. I'm obsessed." At first, it might have seemed like just another moody love song. But once the victim was confirmed as Celeste Rivas Hernandez, those words felt like a smoking gun. Because this wasn't just about the name. Celeste really did have a tattoo, small and distinctive, on her index finger. And David himself carried the exact same tattoo in the same spot, almost like a twisted bond. The coincidences didn't stop there. Another leaked verse from the track read, "Afraid you'll only love me when undressed, but you look so gorgeous in that dress. Missing you so much make me depressed." Fans were quick to point out how this lined up with Celeste's social media posts, where she often posed in tube tops and dresses similar to what she was last seen wearing. Then came the eerie revelation that shook even David's most loyal supporters. One of his biggest singles, Romantic Homicide, was released on September 7th, the exact birthday of Celeste Rivas Hernandez. Was it a disturbing coincidence, or had David been deliberately dropping breadcrumbs in plain sight? To some, it looked less like music and more like bragging, songs that read like diary entries of crime long before police ever caught up. And as more people combed through his catalog, the question grew louder. Had David been confessing through his art this entire time, while the world just danced along to the beat? As if the lyrics weren't damning enough, disturbing footage soon surfaced that sent shockwaves through the fandom. In one clip, David was seen crouched over a pair of sneakers, scrubbing them obsessively, almost frantically, as if he was trying to erase something. At first, it looked harmless, just another quirky moment from a rising star. But once Celeste's body was identified, the detail became chilling, because the shoes he was cleaning looked nearly identical to the Hello Kitty-themed sneakers Celeste often wore in her social media photos. The timing of the clip made it even worse, allegedly recorded not long after she went missing. To many, it didn't look like self-care, it looked like a cover-up. But the unsettling coincidences didn't end there. Old interviews resurfaced where David spoke about his creative process, and what he described now reads like a blueprint for murder. He revealed that he had created an alter ego named Itami, a Japanese word meaning pain. According to David, Itami wasn't just a stage character, but the villain in a concept he had been developing for an anime series. The storyline? A detective battles his own dark alter ego, who commits murders that the detective himself is then forced to solve. At the time, fans brushed it off as edgy creativity. But now, with a real teenager's death tied to his name, that story feels more like a confession wrapped in fiction. David even compared Itami to Tyler Durden from Fight Club, the sinister alter ego that pushes a man deeper into chaos. And then there were the performances. Videos from his shows suddenly looked sinister when replayed in light of the investigation. Fans remembered him standing on stage beside a coffin, singing about death and obsession, or playing both killer and victim in his One More Dance music video. At the time, it felt theatrical, dark, goth-inspired performance art. But now, those same visuals are being rewatched with suspicion. Every coffin prop and funereal lyric scene as something far more sinister. To the internet, it no longer looked like performance. It looked like a public rehearsal for crimes he may have already committed. By this point, the mounting evidence was impossible to ignore, and police moved in fast. Just days after Celeste's remains were identified, a full tactical team raided David's Los Angeles home in the early hours of the morning. Neighbors described waking up to flashing lights, armored vehicles, and officers battering down the front door. One woman told reporters she thought it was a movie set at first, until she realized it was real, and it was happening to the quiet young pop star who lived next door. Inside, investigators uncovered what they later called items of interest, including blood-stained clothing, hard drives filled with unreleased songs, and a black duffel bag containing knives and a hammer. One of those knives, sources claim, is now being tested as a potential murder weapon. Detectives also seized several pairs of sneakers, some reportedly matching the style Celeste was last seen in, along with handwritten journals filled with dark imagery, obsession, and veiled references to Itami, his sinister alter ego. As news of the raid spread, David's carefully constructed image unraveled overnight. He abruptly canceled the remainder of his sold-out tour, issuing a vague statement through his label that he was fully cooperating with authorities and needed time to focus on his mental health. But to fans, that explanation rang hollow. Social media exploded with clips of his past performances, dissected lyrics, and the raid footage itself. Many began to question whether David was cooperating or just scrambling to cover his tracks before investigators put all the pieces together. What was once teenage heartthrob energy now looked like the mask of a killer hiding in plain sight. As investigators dug deeper, a chilling picture began to form. This wasn't random. David had been fixated on Celeste for far longer than anyone realized. Online traces showed that he had interacted with not one, but two different Celestes. A younger Celeste he seemed to groom through social media, and a real Celeste Rivas Hernandez, who became the center of his dark obsession. Fans unearthed an old TikTok where Celeste lip-synced to a Hello Kitty track, dancing in her room with her signature pink sandals in view. At the time, it was harmless teenage content, but paired with David's sneaker-cleaning clip and his lyrics referencing a girl with Hello Kitty shoes, the video now feels like a breadcrumb he had been following. Even darker was the birthday connection. One of his biggest singles was released on September 7th, the exact day Celeste was born. Whether by chance or by design, it gave the impression of a grotesque tribute. Then came the leaks. Screenshots of Discord conversations began circulating, allegedly showing David reaching out to Celeste in private. In one exchange, she argued with her family about going to see him in concert, her parents suspicious, her cousins warning her it wasn't safe. But like many teens starstruck by fame, she brushed off their concerns, determined to prove she could handle herself. Those chats, once innocent, now read like red flags her family couldn't wave fast enough. And perhaps the most disturbing detail of all was buried in a clip from a live stream. In it, Celeste herself laughs nervously as she calls David a pedophile on camera. At the time, it seemed like a joke, just a teenager poking fun at an older singer's interest in her. But today, it plays like an eerie premonition, a victim naming her predator before the world caught on. It was no longer just speculation or edgy performance art. The evidence was pointing towards something far more sinister, a pattern of obsession that blurred the line between celebrity crush and calculated grooming. If the lyrics and live streams weren't enough, the internet quickly uncovered receipts that painted David in an even darker light. Fans dug up screenshots from his old Instagram posts and Discord chats, where his captions were shockingly violent. In one, he posed with a hunting knife, writing, "She won't scream if she can't breathe." In another, he casually showed off a nail gun, joking that it was better than roses for a date. At the time, his followers chalked it up to his brooding, goth-inspired aesthetic. But after Celeste's body was found dismembered, those captions took on a horrifying new meaning. The deeper fans went into his online community, the uglier things became. His private Discord server, once considered a safe space for die-hard supporters, turned out to be a breeding ground for disturbing conversations. Members were caught joking about Jeffrey Epstein and keeping girls quiet, as if sexual exploitation was some kind of meme. Screenshots show moderators frantically deleting entire threads and banning users who tried to repost David's old comments, clearly scrambling to scrub incriminating evidence. But by then, it was too late. The internet never forgets, and hundreds of those images had already been archived and shared across TikTok and Reddit. What began as fandom devotion started to look like a cult of silence. Some diehards insisted David was innocent, while others pieced together a chilling narrative of grooming. Between the lyrics, the birthday coincidences, the sneaker footage, and now the online receipts, the pattern was undeniable. David had been circling Celeste for years, leaving behind a trail of digital fingerprints that felt less like performance art and more like documentation of a predator at work. And for investigators, the line between celebrity culture and criminal evidence was disappearing fast. As the evidence piled up, public opinion turned brutally against David. Fans who once worshipped him now drew comparisons to some of the darkest figures in music history. R. Kelly, Diddy, even Michael Jackson. Commentators pointed out that the red flags had been there all along. The disturbing lyrics, the coffin props, the Discord leaks. But just like with R. Kelly's decades of abuse allegations, the industry seemed to look the other way as long as David was profitable. His music generated millions in streaming revenue. His tours sold out in hours, and labels raked in cash while ignoring the danger signs. For critics, it was the same old story. Protect the money, silence the victims, and hope no one asks too many questions. Meanwhile, outside the world of headlines and hashtags, the human toll came into full view. In Lake Elsinore, Celeste's family and community gathered for a candlelight vigil in her honor. Friends describe her as sweet, funny, and full of life, holding up photos of her as a child. Tears mixed with outrage as speakers demanded accountability, not just from David, but from an industry that allowed him to rise unchecked. The vigil became both an emotional release and a rallying cry. No more excuses, no more blind eyes, turned to abuse wrapped in stardom. And then came the bombshell. An arrest warrant for David Anthony Burke was officially confirmed. The young star who once embodied teenage angst and heartbreak was now facing the possibility of standing trial for one of the most shocking celebrity-linked crimes in recent memory. Prosecutors hinted that the case could rival the scale and cultural impact of R. Kelly, Michael Jackson, and Diddy's ongoing legal battles. A trial that would force the world to confront the blurred line between celebrity and predator. But at the heart of it all remains one haunting question. Was David truly a tortured artist whose darkest fantasies spilled into his art? Or was he a calculating monster hiding in plain sight, using fame as the perfect cover for obsession and violence?